Hi, so in this video I would like to talk about the black and the isort libraries, which are really important, especially when you work in a team environment, but also even as a solo Python developer, you want to kind of make sure that you hold to certain standards when you write code. And these are usually the PEP 8 standards. If you don't know what PEP 8 is, just do a Google search for PEP 8. Now, as usual, the code that I use in this video is in the GitHub repo, which is linked in the description below the video. So black looks at things like indentation, line length, the use of double quotes for strings, spacing with your operators. Should there be a space? Should there not be a space? When you use a function call, for example, and you have named arguments, no spaces around the equal sign. But if you assign a value to a variable, a equals 1, there should be spaces around the equal sign. Same thing if you have operators like plus and minus, you should have spacing around those operators. Black is going to basically take care of all those details for you. So even if you miss that as you're typing your code, black will essentially fix that up for you. Isort, on the other hand, focuses on the order of imports in your module. Now, you should always place all your imports at the top of the module. That's a convention that Python developers use because that way it's very easy to look at a module and know exactly what the dependencies are for that module. But moreover, you want to structure those imports in a relatively consistent way. And typically the way that you do it is that you place any imports of the standard library at the very top. Then you place your imports for any third-party libraries in a middle section. And then in the third section, you place the imports for your own modules and packages inside the current project. Moreover, there's a way in which those things are ordered within each section, as well as if you import multiple things on one line, you want to make sure that they're alphabetically ordered. Again, isort will take care of that for you in case you missed it. It will reformat your code to conform to those kinds of conventions. Now, in another video that I'll do later, we'll take a look at the Flake 8 package, which is essentially a linter for Python, which is also going to catch all those kinds of issues and will report back and tell you there's a problem. Now, in the team environment, and when you have a CI/CD kind of pipeline, before you can do a merge of your code into the repo, it's going to run something like Flake 8. And if it finds something that's not good, that doesn't pass Flake 8, it's going to stop you from doing the merge. That's at least how many repos are set up. So you'll want to learn about black and isort because it helps you avoid a lot of the problems that Flake 8 will pick up. And you'll need to learn also how to use Flake 8 as well. And we'll do that later. So the first thing we'll need to do is to install those two libraries, black and isort. So to install black, we just need to do a pip install black. If you're using the pipenv environment that I have in the GitHub repo, you can just do pipenv install -- dev because I place black and isort in the dev section of pipenv since it's not really needed when you're deploying your code, at least not usually. It's only needed when you're developing your code or when you're running these pipelines to basically check the code that you're trying to merge into your repo. And then for isort, we will just pip install isort. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a virtual environment. So I'm going to say Python 3.10 -mvenv, and I'm going to create a virtual environment called .venv. So once I do that, I now have my virtual environment created. You can see it showed up in my folder here, or if you just want to ls it, you can see that venv is here. Now the next thing, and that's important, is I need to activate it first. So we'll go ahead and source the .venv bin activate. Now it's activated. If you're running under Windows, of course, you'll have to use the Windows equivalent for activating your virtual environment. So now I want to go ahead and install black and Python. So I can just type pip install black like so, and then I could say pip install isort. And now those two libraries are installed. Now I actually have them in my requirements.txt file. If we look at that, you can see that I've got black and isort, and I've got a couple of other ones as well, numpy and paperclip, for example. So let's go ahead and run this. So I'm going to pip install -r requirements.txt. That will install numpy and paperclip. So I just want a couple of extra libraries in there. So if you were starting with an existing project, you would already have your requirements.txt file, or you would have, let's say, a pipenv file, whatever you're doing, all you need to do is just add black and isort. So what I've done here is I've created a few files that are basically containing badly formatted code. There's nothing wrong with the code that will run. I could, for example, try and run. So I could say python badly formatted.py, and that should run just fine. Okay, so we have some output over here. So it runs fine. There's nothing wrong in terms of how the code runs. However, if you look, this code is a mess. Right, I've got imports that are kind of all over the place. I import mod2, which is in my project. And then from mod1, I import a few things. And then suddenly I import something from the standard library. And then I import something else from the standard library. Then I import NumPy. I might even put in, import paperclip maybe up here. So, and this is why I wanted to install it. Let's say I do that. So it's really a mess. Then I've got like way too many lines. Blank lines. Usually in a module we want 2 blank lines between this section and the first kind of definition here, or the code. Here I've put in my arguments over multiple lines, but in fact it can really fit over a single line. Then I've got return a times b, and here actually I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this to a single quote. Nothing wrong with that, but typically what black does, it will standardize on double quotes. So we can go ahead and do the same thing here. We can change that to single quotes, like so. You can see I've got spacing here that really shouldn't exist. Here, I don't have spacing between the equals operator. I really should have. Here, I don't have space between between or around the multiplication operator. Here, I've got a really long line. I have no idea what it does. I just wrote basically a bunch of junk, but you can see it's a very long line. It's 135 characters, and and then that's it. And here I've got spaces, right? If you look here, there's no blank line at the end of the file either. This one over here, again, this one I have, let's go ahead and add a few just to show what happens. The rest is pretty much okay. The really badly formatted one is this one. Okay, so the other thing too is that we can configure how black and isort are going to run. And it's especially important when you run both, because isort and black sometimes clash with how they want to do things. In particular, isort does things with how it kind of reformats your import statements that black doesn't like. So there is a configuration that needs to be done. So we configure that in pyproject.toml. Now, the pyproject toml file is something that black requires if you want to give it any kind of configuration. There are other options when you're configuring isort, but it also supports the toml file. So basically, I just have a single toml file, and I've got a section for tool.black. The default line length in black is 80 characters, so it will basically reformat your code to be 80 characters long. Typically, I tend to go 100, 120, but that's kind of up to you. And if you're working in a team, it's going to be up to the team to decide what they want their line length to be. And then the only thing that we need to do for isort here is to basically give it this profile and tell it that, hey, we're using black as well. And isort then knows about this, and it's going to change some of its internal configuration accordingly. And there are other things that you can provide for the isort. Black, there isn't a lot of options available for black. Black is very opinionated. It says, you should do it this way, and that's it. Isort has a few more options, but in general, this is pretty good. This is enough. So now that we have that, and we've got this badly formatted code and so on, you remember that the imports were all over the place and so on. Let's go ahead and actually run black, and let's run isort. There are different command line parameters that you can pass to black and isort. The basic ones are, do you want black and isort to modify your code or only tell you what it would modify? And it's always a good idea to run this first to see, well, what would it modify, just to get an idea before you just let it loose on your code. So in order to do that, you would call black and you would use the --diff flag. And then you can specify a file, a specific file that you want to black, or a directory, and it will black every Python file within that directory. If you wanted to actually make the code changes, you just do black and then your file or directory. And isort is the same. You can isort a file or directory that will make the changes, or you can ask it for a diff instead and see what is going to change. And then I'll also talk about the configuration in here. Okay, so let's actually run this. So let's switch to a terminal. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Let's clear this. And now if I'm in this directory here, right? So I could go ahead and say black -- diff. I want to know what are you going to change, and I'm going to use the current directory. Basically every Python file in this directory, go ahead and black it. And it will basically tell us that, hey, 2 files would be reformatted. So out of those 3 files, 2 would be reformatted, 1 would be left unchanged. And then you can see kind of the changes that it's going to make. So here it's removing 3 lines. Here it's adding this. So it's removing this definition here, like so. And instead it's replacing it with this. So you can see it took those and put them back on the same line. And it's going to put the spacing around the star, around the multiplication symbol. Then you can see that if name equals the double quote now has been put in, you can see that it actually removed it and then replaced it with this. So it changed the single quotes to double quotes. You can see here as well that it took these 2 lines and it made a change. It basically put the spacing around A and B and so on. So you get an idea of what it's going to do. And then the same thing with isort. We can say isort -- diff and then the current directory. And if we see again, it's going to tell us kind of what it's doing. It's a little harder to understand what's going on, but it's basically removing this import mod2, the import paperclip, the from mod1. So it's going to start now with import JSON, and from typing, it basically does that. And then let's actually make another change. I just want to show you that as well. Let's say that I go back to here, and then from typing, I'm going to import list, then union, and then any, like so. And then this one, I'm going to intersperse as well with ABC, and then we'll put XYZ in here, let's say, like this, okay? So let's make some changes here. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and run the isort diff again. And let's look at that diff. So let me make this bigger. So you can see that the first thing it did is it actually wrote import JSON at the top. And then from typing, import any list and union. You can see that based on what we had before, so it basically moved JSON to the top and typing to the top. Why? Well, because those are part of the standard library. Standard library section goes first. And then it took the different imports that we had over here and it made them in alphabetical order. Then it put in NumPy and paperclip. Well, yeah, NumPy and paperclip were over here. So first of all, it put them into their own section because they're third-party libraries. It was able to identify that, and it put them also in alphabetical order. And then it went ahead and left our import mod2, which is kind of, was our first line, but now it inserted all these things above. So that one stays the same. It removed import paperclip from mod1, etc. And then it put in this from mod1 import, and you can see that it did test A, B, C, and so on. So this is the diff. So now we can go ahead and actually just run black. So we can say black, period. Well, actually, I'm going to run isort first. So I usually run it in that order. I do the isort first. That's going to actually make changes. You can see that it fixed this. So if we take a look now at our imports, we have them in the correct order. We have the sections, and the imports and the froms, right, are, again, all the simple imports are done first, then the from modules are done second. And so this is why import, from mod1 is not above import mod2, because yes, mod1 alphabetically comes before mod2, but you have a regular import first, and then the froms come after that. So you can see how it reformatted the imports. And now let's go ahead and do the black as well for that, because you can see nothing else has changed, just the imports have changed. Now let's run black on all the files. So it reformatted 2 files, and let's see what it did. So you can see now that we have proper spacing here. We've got proper, this is back on one line because, well, we said the line length was 100 characters, so it's possible to fit everything on a single line. We've got the spacing. You can see it added the spacing over here. And you can see as well that this was changed. We had more than 2 lines. Now all that is fine as well. So 2 steps every time, isort and black. So if you don't want to have to type those things again and again, you can actually create a makefile. So, and of course, this isn't going to work under Windows because you cannot, Windows doesn't support makefiles, but if you're on Linux or Mac, you can do that. And basically, you can just create some targets. So we can say standardize, and let's say standardize diff, and it's going to do 2 things. It's going to do an isort -- diff on the current directory, and it's going to do a black -- diff on the current directory. And then I'll call one just called standardize, and that's going to call isort without the diff. So now this is actually making changes, and then black, like so. So now that we have that, then it's very simple to redo all those steps that we had. So if I go back here and I'm going to undo all the changes, or at least some of them, I guess. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy them back from the GitHub repo. So I've got this, and I'm not going to bother changing the other ones. But you can see we're back to all this code. Oh, I never changed. Let's change that back as well. Okay, so anyways, you get the idea, badly formatted code. Now, all I need to do is to say make black. I could just do a black, standardize diff, and that's just going to do the diff, and it's going to do the diff both for black and for isort. So we get the isort diff, and then we get the black diff. Or I could just say make standardize, and it's going to actually do all the reformatting, and I'm back to a properly formatted file. And that's it. That's black and isort. Thank you for watching.